Hello everyone and welcome to today's edition of the Daf Yomi. Today we're doing Tractate Masechet Makkos Daf 8b. So carry on from the last comment. Rava replied, there it is different. As there is states with regard to one impure with impurity implied by a corpse, he shall be impure, Numbers 19:13, indicating that the same halachot apply in any case, only related to the manner in which he became impure. The Gemara challenges, he requires that verse for a different derivation. As that which is taught in a Braita, the phrase, he shall be impure, serves to include one who immersed that day, and whose purification process will be completed at nightfall. If he enters the temple before nightfall, he is also liable to receive karet. The phrase later in that verse, his impurity is upon him, serves to include one who has not yet brought an atonement offering to complete the purification process, e.g. a leper or a zav. Rav said to Ravina, I said that the halacha that one rendered impure by a maid mitzvah is liable to receive karet is derived from the extraneous term yet in the phrase later in that same verse. His impurity is yet upon him, which indicates that one is liable for entering the temple in a state of impurity, regardless of the manner in which he became impure. This is one version of the discussion. Some teach this exchange with regard to this brisa. In plowing and in harvest you shall rest, in Exodus 34:21. Rabbi Akiva says, this verse is referring to the sabbatical year. The Torah does not need to state the prohibition against plowing during the sabbatical year or harvesting during the sabbatical year, as is already stated, you shall neither sow your field nor prune your vineyard in Leviticus 25:4. So what does that phrase mean? The Torah does not need to state. I just lost a footnote here. Akiva holds that although this verse is written in the context of Shabbat, a reference to sabbatical year, as it is already derived that it is prohibited to perform labor on Shabbat, and there is no reason for the Torah to specify plowing and reaping. What then is derived from this verse? Well, it is derived that even plowing on the eve of the sabbatical year, one who immersed that day may not enter the woman's courtyard in the temple until sunset. Sorry, that's wrong. Plowing on the eve of the sabbatical year. Chorei shel erev Shavuos. There is a halacha transmitted to Moses from Sinai that it is prohibited to work the land 30 days before the start of the sabbatical year. Even today, when observance of the sabbatical year is by rabbinic law, according to the Rambam, it is forbidden to plant, graft, and lay trees immediately before the sabbatical year. Any tree planted within 44 days of the beginning of the sabbatical year must be uprooted. And that's in the Rambam Sefer Zerayim, Hilchos Shemitah V'Yovel 3:111, which facilitates growth of crops when the sabbatical year enters, and the harvest of crops that grew during the sabbatical year, which emerged and were reaped after the conclusion of the sabbatical year, are prohibited. The stage of the produce of the sabbatical year that reached the stage of development before beginning the 80th year that would render one obligated to tithe that produce, were it to be one of the other 6 years of the sabbatical cycle, is that of sabbatical year produce in every sense, even though it was not harvested during the sabbatical year. And that's Noram Sefer Zerayim, Hilchos Shemitah V'Yovel 4:9-13. Rabbi Yishmael says, this verse in Exodus is not referring to sabbatical year, rather the reference is to plowing and harvesting on Shabbat. Just as plowing is optional, as there is no case where there is a mitzvah to plow per se, so too the harvesting mentioned in the verse is optional. This serves to exclude from the prohibition the harvesting of barley for the Omer offering. There is a mitzvah to harvest the Omer on the night of the 16th of Nisan, whether it occurs during the week or on Shabbat. Although there is a mitzvah by Torah to harvest the barley from the new crop that is still attached to the ground for the sake of the Omer, there is no standing barley to be. If there is no standing barley to be found, one may bring the Omer from barley that was already harvested. Rambam Sefer Avodah Hilchot Tamidim Mitzrafim 7-6-8. Which is a mitzvah and is therefore permitted on Shabbat. One of the sages said to Rava, from where does Rabbi Yishmael ascertain that the plowing mentioned in the verse is referring to plowing that is optional. House reference is to plowing a field to grow barley for use in the Yom offering, which is a mitzvah. And even so, the mitzvah states, "You shall rest." Rava said to him, since if one found the field already plowed, he need not plow the field, but he may directly proceed to sow the barley in the plowed field. Clearly, if one plows a field to facilitate fulfillment of a mitzvah, plowing is not a mitzvah per se. Ravina raised an objection to the opinion of Rava from the clause of the Mishnah that states that the example of the forest serves to exclude a father who strikes his son, and a teacher who oppresses his student, and an agent of the court. And according to your opinion, why are a father who strikes his son and a teacher who oppresses his student excluded from exile? That to say that with regard to a father who strikes his son, since if the son is learned, it is not a mitzvah to strike him. Now, in the case where the son is not learned and he strikes him to facilitate his education too, it is not a mitzvah, and therefore he should be exiled. Rava replied that even if the son is learned and the father is performing a mitzvah, by striking him from time to time, as it is written, chastise your son and he will give you rest, and he will give delight to your son, Proverbs 29:17, rather than said, that which I said is nothing. As there is a different proof that the verse is not referring to plowing that is a mitzvah. Based on the juxtaposition of the two, it is derived that harvesting is similar to plowing. Just in the case of plowing, if one found the field already plowed, he need not plow, as there is no case where there is a mitzvah to plow per se. So too with regard to harvesting as well, as one found the barley already harvested, he need not harvest. And if it enters your mind that the reference in the verse is to plowing and harvesting for the purpose of a mitzvah, it is so that if one found the barley already harvested, he did not harvest. There is a mitzvah to harvest and bring the barley for the Yom offering. The prohibition in the verse applies only to harvesting that is optional. Mishnah. Ha'av gola al yedei habein. The father is exiled to a city of refuge due to his unintentional murder of his son. What does that mean? A son who unintentionally kills his father is exiled. Likewise, the father is exiled if he unintentionally kills his son, not in the course of teaching him, or in the course of teaching him an additional trade, not required by the son. I'm safe in the Zich and Hilchot V'Seichel Shmiras HaNefesh 5:5. And the son is exiled due to his unintentional murder of his father. Everyone is exiled due to their unintentional murder of a Jew. If a Jew unintentionally killed a Canaanite slave or ger toshav, he is exiled. A slave unintentionally killed a Jew or ger toshav, and a ger toshav unintentionally killed a slave, Sikhet of Mishnah, or another ger toshav is also exiled. If a ger toshav killed a Jew, even if he did so unintentionally, he is executed. The Rava disagreed with the Rambam with regard to a Jew unintentionally killed a ger toshav, as the form of the Mishnah is. From the Mishnah, it is clear that he is not exiled. The Ketzer Mishnah states that there is a scribal error in the text of the Rambam. See, however, Tosfos Yom Tov, who justifies the Rambam's opinion. Rambam Tifnei Zichner would say Shmiras HaNefesh 5:3. And the Jew is exiled due to his unintentional murder of any of them, except for the unintentional murder of a Gentile who resides in Eretz Yisrael and observes the 7 Noachide mitzvot, a ger toshav. Chutz Miger Toshav. There is a variant reading of the Mishnah, except for Jew to a ger toshav. Tosfos Yom Tov, preceded by early commentators, explains the variant readings as the basis of a dispute between the Rambam and the Ravid with regard to the halacha concerning exile and a ger toshav. According to the version, except for Jew to a ger toshav, a Jew who kills a ger toshav is not liable to be exiled. Rashi explains the version that appears in the Gemara in that manner. According to the version, except for ger toshav, if a ger toshav is intentionally kills a Jew, he is executed, not exiled. All descendants of Noah are executed for unintentionally killing a Jew. If a ger toshav unintentionally killed a ger toshav or Canaanite slave, is exiled. One cannot conclude based on the Mishnah, according to the version, that a Jew who unintentionally kills a ger toshav is not exiled. The opinion is based on the second verse C9a. And a ger toshav is exiled only due to his unintentional murder of a ger toshav. The Mishnah teaches the father is exiled to a city of refuge due to his unintentional murder of his son. Go ask, but didn't you say in the previous Mishnah to exclude a father who strikes his son, who is not exiled. The Gemara answers, this mission is referring to a son who has learned, and there is no mitzvah to strike him, and therefore, since the striking is optional, the father is exiled. The Gemara asks, but didn't you say even if a son has learned, the father performs a mitzvah by striking his son? The Gemara answers, the ruling of the mission is stated with regard to a carpenter's apprentice, a Bishavaliya. This word is related to the mandrik shalvaya or ashvalia, the term for the disciple in that Aramaic dialect. A reading of the text and it reads Shalvaya spelled with a double vav, which is related to Shalvaya spelled with a base, meaning one led by others. Since the father is teaching his son carpentry, not Torah, there is no mitzvah to strike him to spur him to study. The Gemara challenges, in the case of carpenter's apprentice, his father is teaching him a livelihood, which is also a mitzvah. The Gemara answers, the reference is to a son who has already learned another craft, and since he is able to earn his livelihood, there is no mitzvah to teach him a second craft. The Mishnah teaches, and the son's execution was unintentional murder of his father, and the Gemara raises a contradiction from a Braita. It is written, and a murderer shall flee there. One who strikes a person unintentionally, Numbers 35:11, from which it is derived that one who strikes a person is exiled. This serves to exclude one who strikes his father. His punishment for doing so is intentionally more severe than that of the standard intentional murderer, and therefore the son is not subject to exile. Okay, I understand this is not difficult. The Braita is according to the opinion of Rabbi Shimon, and it is according to the opinion of the rabbis. Rabbi Shimon and the rabbis disagree in Sanhedrin 50a. Whether a son kills his father intentionally is executed by strangulation or by the sword. According to Rabbi Shimon, who says strangulation is more severe than execution by the sword, which is why a son who kills his father is liable to be executed by strangulation. One who commits an unwitting violation of a prohibition punishable by execution by the sword, i.e. unintentional murder in general, is liable for atonement by means of exile. One who commits the unwitting violation of a prohibition punishable by a more severe death than of strangulation, i.e. intentional murder of a parent, is not eligible for atonement by means of exile. By contrast, according to the rabbis who say execution by the sword is more severe than strangulation, which is why a son who kills his father is liable to be executed by strangulation. A son who unintentionally kills his father has performed an unwitting violation of prohibition punishable by execution by the sword, and one who commits an unwitting violation of a prohibition punishable by execution by the sword, i.e. an intentional murder in general, is eligible for atonement by means of exile. Rabbi says that is which is derived in the Braita, that one who strikes a person is exiled, to exclude one who strikes his father, who is not exiled, is not referring to a son who unintentionally kills his father, and in that case the son is certainly exiled. Rather, it is to exclude one who inflicts a wound on his father unwittingly. Although one who inflicts a wound on his father is liable to be executed, if he does so unintentionally, he is not liable to be exiled. Rambam Sefer Nazik and Hilchot V'Tzeich Shmirat HaNefesh 7:15. The novel element of this derivation is that if it enters your mind to say, since in a case where he wounded his father intentionally, he is liable to be executed like a murderer, and see Exodus 21:15. If he did so unwittingly, then him also be exiled like an unintentional murderer. Therefore, this derivation teaches us that exile is administered specifically to an unintentional murderer, but it is not administered to the unwitting performer of any other transgression. The Mishnah teaches everyone is exiled due to the unintentional murder of a Jew, and the Jew is exiled due to the unintentional murder of any of them. The Gemara asks, everyone is exiled due to the unintentional murder of a Jew. What case was not already specified that this phrase serves to add? The Gemara answers, it serves to add a Canaanite slave and a Samaritan. People in these categories are not considered Jews in every sense. A slave who is a Canaanite slave who is immersed, he is not obligated to fulfill all the mitzvot that Jewish men are obligated to fulfill. Rather, he is obligated to fulfill the mitzvot that Jewish women are obligated to fulfill. In addition, it is prohibited for him to marry a Jewish woman. There is a dispute between the sages whether the conversion of the Samaritans who were transferred in the kingdom of Israel after conquered by Sennacherib was a bona fide conversion. In any event, even according to Rabbi Meir's opinion that the conversion was legitimate, they later deviated from the proper path and rejected the oral Torah. Therefore, their practice generally greatly deviates from normative halacha in several areas. The Gemara notes, We learn by inference from this Mishnah that the sages taught explicitly in the Brisa, a Canaanite slave and a Samaritan are exiled. One who kills a Canaanite slave intentionally is executed. If he did so unintentionally, he is exiled. The later commentators hold that the Rambam omitted the halacha of a Samaritan because he is of the opinion that the state of a Samaritan is that of a Gentile. And flogged due to a Jew, and a Jew is exiled and flogged due to a Samaritan and a Canaanite slave. The Gemara analyzes this Brisa. Granted, a slave and a Samaritan are exiled and flogged due to a Jew. Each of them is exiled in a case where he killed a Jew unintentionally, and flogged in a case where he cursed the Jew, thereby violating a Torah prohibition. But with regard to the halacha that a Jew is exiled and flogged due to a Samaritan, granted the Jew is exiled in a case where he killed a Samaritan unintentionally, but the Jew is flogged for violating what prohibition? For cursing the Samaritan. Isn't that prohibition derived from the verse, "And the leader of your people you may not curse," Exodus 21:27, from which it is inferred that the prohibition is in effect only with regard to one who performs an action characteristic of your people, who comports himself as an observant God-fearing Jew. Even if the conversion of the Samaritans was valid, they regularly violate numerous prohibitions, and they do not comport themselves as observant Jews. Rather, Rav Aha bar Yaakov said, this Brisa is not referring to lashes administered for cursing. Rather, one is flogged in a case where a Jew testified against a Samaritan, and a Samaritan testified against a Jew, and he was rendered a conspiring witness. The Gemara asked, doesn't that mean that in a corresponding situation with regard to a Canaanite slave, a slave is flogged in a case where he testified against a Jew and was rendered a conspiring witness? Is a slave eligible to give testimony? Rather, Rav Aha, son of Rav Ika, said, what are we dealing with here? The Jew is flogged due to a slave and a Samaritan, and the slave and the Samaritan are flogged due to a Jew in a case where one struck the other with a blow. Just finish that sentence on the next onward. That does not have the capacity to cause damage with one putter, as Rabbi Ami says, that Rabbi Yochanan says, although one who strikes another pays damages and is not flogged, if he struck him with a blow that does not have the capacity to cause damage worth one putter, since there is no payment, he is flogged for violating a Torah prohibition. So I'll go into the footnotes of that on the next video. Thank you for listening, and all the best. Bye.